Hello, today we'll be discussing the 2022 MLB MVP frontrunners in both leagues as we are a quarter way through the season. So it's a good time to look at who's been hot through the first quarter and who really should be up there within the MVP race but isn't really meeting expectations. So first we're going to start, these are ranked by F4, by league. So first we're going to start with Taylor Ward, who has been just shattering all expectations. Before this season, he's had a negative career WAR, yet this season he's at the very top of the league, putting up stats well above everyone else's in every single category. His batting average is currently a 370, clearly unsustainable, but he has done it through 30 or 31 games so far, so maybe he can make that last at least a bit longer. And that goes along with his 481 on base percentage, accompanied by his second highest on this list behind only Juan Soto with a 17.6% walk rate, which if Juan Soto is the only person above you in walks, that's a very good sign. And his absolutely insane 30 points better than Trout, 713 slugging percent, which keeping that up, that's what Shohei was doing through a solid chunk of last season, and that was marveled at. So if he can even keep that in the 600s by the end of the season, that would be a success. His 246 WRC plus is the most in the league by far, as expected with the previous stats. Like I said, his walk rate 17.6% and his K rate is 19.8, which fitting in with the others on this list is still quite solid and nothing to be concerned about. And his 9 home runs, typically he bats leadoff, so his 23 RBI, he doesn't always have the most opportunity for RBI. But again, with those other stats, not really the most important. Next comes Trout, his teammate, who frequently bats directly behind him, meaning that Ward does get to see pitches because they do not want Ward on base when Trout comes up. It's a great thing to have in your lineup. His 317 batting average is just slightly above average for him, but still kind of what we would expect from Trout. 427 on base percent with his basically perfectly career average 14.7 walk percent. And his 683 slugging is certainly higher than is usually sustainable throughout a season. But again, if you think about Trout, you think high slugging, it's not really a surprise. 313 WRC plus with this, about 30 or 40 points above career average. Again, that should come down a bit, but maybe he can sustain it. He's had some close to it before. His 25% strikeout rate, again, is pretty similar to what he puts up career-wise. 11 home runs. He's had a few multi-homer games, and his 24 RBI. A lot of those are not being awarded. Judge with his 2.6 F4, 307 batting average, which is high for him, but it's not unexpected. And his 381 on base percent, accompanied by a slightly higher, about 2 or 3 points than his career average walk rate of 11, which from the beginning of his career has increased significantly. And his strikeout rate at 26% has decreased about 4 points from the first few seasons where he was striking out over 30%. So good to see that's come down a bit. His 380 and then his 664 slugging is very solid with his 204 WRC plus. Hopefully he can keep that up. 14 home runs leads the league. If he got that one in Camden Yards and left field, this would be even better. And I don't normally say anything about the short porch, but considering Judge made a comment about the left field wall at Camden Yards, I feel it's kind of okay to just bring up the short porch in general with the Yankees, because you can't complain about one stadium while benefiting that much from your own. And then his 30 RBI helped contribute to that very productive and extremely successful Yankees lineup. Jose Ramirez, with his 2.3 F4, is having another very solid season. I don't even know if he can really be considered underrated so far, or not so far, anymore, since he got his extension. A lot more people are starting to realize how truly solid he is and how he's really up there in the MVP race every year, as he should be. His 287 batting average, 380 on base percent, is accompanied by his higher than average 13% walk rate and his below average, which in this case is good, 9% strikeout rate. So add those to your 588 slugging, and he has a really good 181 WRC plus, which hopefully that does definitely seem a lot more maintainable And then some of the guys above him on this list with the over 200 WRC pluses, 181, he could definitely be around there at the end of the season. His 9 home runs and 37 RBI, which at the beginning of the season, I think he hit 20 RBI in the first, I think around 10 or fewer games. He was doing fantastic. And then Vladdy, who, as we know, last season finished second and should be at the very top of this list, but so far he just is not meeting expectations. Only 0.7 F4 with his 275 average, which is fine. 358 on base percent and 457 slugging, but still comes out to a 135 WRC plus, which on its own would be fantastic. But considering what we saw from him last season, the expectations were far higher. He was expected to win MVP or become a finalist again this season. So based on the guys above him, he has a decent amount of work to do to catch up to them. His 10% walk rate and 18% strikeout rate are fine. Nothing out of the ordinary there. The 7 home runs is a bit concerning considering last season he had, I believe, 48. He finished at the top. And everyone thought he was going to break 50. And this season he only has 7 about a quarter through. He's only on track for like slightly less than 30, which would be a pretty big disappointment after last season. And then on to the NL, Machado leading all of MLB with his 3 F4 and his 363 batting average, which is about 100 above his career average. So that should certainly come down. Even if it lowers to about 310, that would still be an extremely successful season from him. No way anyone expected him to maintain the 3.6. Well, 360, sorry. His 437 on base percent, accompanied with his 11.4 walk percent and 18% strikeout rate, and his 568 slugging, bring him out to a 186 WRC plus, which would put him in a almost tie for 4th place on the AL list, and he's first on the NL. So that does show like AL is currently a lot more top heavy. There are a lot more guys who could definitely be competing for it. If the MVP were awarded right now, it would be a lot more difficult to decide in the AL who deserves it than in the NL. He also has 7 home runs and 24 RBI, which for him, perfectly fine. Arenado, though he has 0.8 F4 less than Arenado, his stats are still very much up there. And again, if MVP were today, he and Machado would have a very strong case against each other. So he has a 2.289 batting average, 354 on base, and 563 slugging. These numbers are very much on par with his overall career numbers, but he's doing it outside of Coors. He's hitting the same rate stats, and he does not have that thin Denver air. So the argument that he can't have out of Coors is not really valid whatsoever based on this season. 9.5 strikeout rate and 15% walk rate are fine on his career rate. His 9 home runs, again, shows he can hit out of the park. He doesn't just need Coors to be able to hit it out. And he has 31 RBI. Jazz Chisholm, obviously it's only his 2nd full season in the league. Last season was a bit disappointing for him with his OPS in the 700s. But this season he's trying to turn that around and show that he's also one of the most exciting players in the league. He has a 1.9 F4 with a 294 average and a 341 on base percent, accompanied by a very, very low 6.8 walk rate, which could definitely use some increase. Just help his overall stats. You don't want your on base percent that close to your average. You definitely want a bit more walking in there, especially with his pretty high 23.3 strikeout rate, which if his walk rate were even over 10, that 23.3 strikeout rate would not be horrible, but either strikeouts need to come down or the walks need to go up. And 597 slugging, that'd be fantastic if he could maintain that. It's pretty unlikely, but he would have his 162 WRC plus, which he has his 7 home runs and 27 RBI in a relatively faltering / weak Marlins lineup, who really just year after year can't really seem to put it together, sadly. Next we have Harper, obviously last year's MVP in the NL, 1.6 F4, 305 batting average, which we've kind of come to expect from Harper. In the beginning of his career, his his batting average was right around 250, 260, but based on the last few seasons in the 300s is nothing out of the ordinary for him. 361 on base percent, which is far lower than it should be because he only has a 7.5 walk percent, which is half of his career average. He normally walks 15%. Last season he had 100 walks. This season he's not walking whatsoever, and his 22.4 strikeout rate is nothing out of the ordinary. So it's not like his strikeout rate is far higher, and it's like not allowing him to walk. It's just his walk rate's just down, and that needs to significantly come back up for Harper to be Harper and continue doing what he does best. His 634 slugging, that is the highest on the NL, and based on last season, he could keep that up. Not expecting him to again, but it's definitely a possibility. And his 171 WRC plus. He has 9 home runs, which is very much to be expected from him. We have Harper at mid-30s home runs every season. Maybe low 30s, maybe high 30s, but mid-30s is generally pretty comfortable. It's a safe assumption. So with this, he's on track for about 33, 34. So, yeah, that's good for him. And 27 RBI. Finally, we have Soto, who, like Vladdy, should be at the very top of the MVP race year in and out from here. But this season, he's faltering a bit. It's still a relatively strong season, but certainly not what we would have expected from Soto after last season when he went on a tear in the second half. Only 1.2 F4, 250 batting average, which that's almost the problem. Even though batting average isn't the most important thing on its own, that's still a very strong standout. 390 on base percent with his 18.1% walk rate, which is actually slightly below career average for him, which is insane because it's already so high. And his 14.7 strikeout rate, if he does continue to lower, and Soto walking 3.5% more than he strikes out is unbelievable. But so it's not his on-base percent being brought down by his walks like some other players. It's his actual batting average. And then his 472 slugging is, again, just like Vladdy, less than 500, where we don't want to see it. That means it's less than a base every other bat, and we expect a lot more from them. A 146 WRC plus, which would be fantastic. Normally, most players would love to have that WRC plus. But from Soto, and compared to the players around him, the expectations were certainly higher. 8 home runs, just like Harper. He's expected to hit low to mid-30s, so nothing wrong with that. The 11 RBI could be a bit concerning, considering 8 of those are from his own home runs. But considering the Nats lineup around him, Josh Bell is doing quite well. He has, I'm pretty sure, the same WAR as Soto, but Cruz, who was supposed to be behind Soto and give him lineup protection, is not whatsoever doing well. I think he's about 62 or 68 OPS plus. And considering, obviously, Cruz batting behind him wouldn't help Soto's RBI, but just having that lineup protection in general would really help, and he doesn't have that as much this year as he was supposed to. So obviously Shohei is missing from this list. I will also do a list for the pitchers, and since Shohei is pitching far better this season than hitting, he has about 0.5 batting WAR and then I think 1.2 pitching WAR. So clearly his pitching is kind of breaking through this season, even though he was fantastic last season. So I'll make another video on the Cy Young race. Not necessarily saying Shohei should win the Cy Young, but I'm just saying I will include him in there. So this is some MVP front runners so far, and some guys who should be up there for the MVP, but they're not really meeting expectations this year. Thank you.